What if the biggest mystery in Silo was never who built the silos? It was who has been writing humanity's future all along. Because after the Season 3 finale, one terrifying possibility changes everything. The rebellion wasn't unexpected. Juliet wasn't unique. The vault wasn't hiding the truth. It was hiding proof that this has happened before. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. Every hero, every rebellion, every sacrifice, every so-called victory may have been part of a cycle that someone predicted long before it ever happened. And if that's true, then nobody inside the silo has ever made a free choice. Not Bernard, not Lucas, not Juliet, not even the founders themselves. But here's what changes everything. The finale quietly answers the biggest question fans have asked since the beginning. Not by explaining it directly, but by showing us a pattern that has been hidden in plain sight since Season 1. And once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. Because that's not the real mystery. The real mystery is this. Who benefits when every generation believes they are the first to discover the truth? Look at what the show is actually telling us. Every time someone uncovers forbidden knowledge, they believe they're breaking the system. George believed it. Allison believed it. Juliet believed it. Even Bernard, in his own way, believed he understood more than everyone else. But every single discovery always leads to another locked door, another secret level, another hidden file, another unanswered question.
Why?
Because information inside the silo never truly disappears. It gets managed, controlled, released only when the system decides it's time. Think about that for a second. If knowledge is carefully released instead of permanently hidden, then someone expects certain people to find it. That completely changes how we should look at the finale. Everyone focused on the final revelations, but almost nobody asked the obvious question. Why were those revelations still there? If the system wanted absolute control, why leave evidence behind it all? Why keep recordings? Why preserve old documents? Why allow hidden tunnels to survive? Why build vaults full of information instead of destroying everything? This is the detail everyone missed. The system doesn't fear discovery. It depends on discovery. Because discovery creates predictable behavior. Once someone learns enough, they always make the same choices. The finale quietly proves this. Notice how every major decision feels strangely familiar. Characters think they're creating history, but they're actually repeating it. And this is where it gets darker. The founders may never have designed a prison. They designed an experiment. A self-correcting experiment. Imagine thousands of people living inside a perfectly controlled environment. Every generation forgets the past. Every generation rebuilds hope. Every generation creates rebels. Every generation produces leaders. Every generation eventually reaches forbidden knowledge. Then the cycle starts again. That's not failure. That's the design. Suddenly Bernard looks completely different. For years, many viewers believed Bernard was simply protecting power. Others believed he was a villain obsessed with control. But the finale hints at something much more disturbing. Bernard may have known he wasn't supposed to stop the cycle, only maintain it. Notice how often he chooses containment instead of destruction. He hides information. He delays people. He redirects investigations. He never completely erases the possibility of rebellion.
Why?
Because eliminating rebellion would actually destroy the experiment. Think carefully. Without rebels, there is no evolution. Without questions, there are no answers. Without conflict, the system learns nothing. That means Bernard isn't guarding the silo. He's guarding the process. A process that may have been running for centuries. But here's something even stranger. Juliet appears to break every rule. She's curious, independent, fearless, impossible to predict. Or at least, that's what we think. Because the finale quietly suggests another possibility. What if people like Juliet aren't accidents? What if the system needs someone exactly like her every cycle? Think back to everything that made Juliet different. Her childhood, her engineering skills, her refusal to obey, her emotional connection to George. Every step pushed her toward uncovering hidden truths, almost as if the path already existed before she started walking it. That doesn't mean her emotions are fake. Far from it. It means the system may understand human psychology better than humans understand themselves. That's the terrifying part. The founders may have realized something long ago. You don't control people by forcing them. You control them by creating environments where they believe every decision is their own. And suddenly, the silo stops looking like a bunker. It starts looking like the world's most advanced behavioral laboratory. Look closely at every major turning point. Whenever someone believes they're escaping control, they're actually entering another controlled space. The deeper they go, the more carefully designed everything becomes. The tunnels, the vaults, the hidden technology, even the timing of discoveries. Nothing feels random anymore. Everything feels placed, not for the current generation, but for the next one. Because every clue isn't just evidence of the past. It's an instruction manual for whoever comes after. And if that's true, then the Season 3 finale didn't reveal the end of the mystery. It revealed that someone has been planning every chapter from the very beginning. But there's one piece of evidence that makes this theory far more disturbing than it first appears. One detail hidden inside the finale completely changes what the silos were actually built to do. And once we connect that clue, the entire purpose of human survival will look completely different. That hidden clue isn't buried inside a speech. It isn't locked inside a computer. It isn't even something a character says. It's a pattern. A pattern the finale quietly repeats until it becomes impossible to ignore. Because every time the truth gets closer, the system becomes calmer. Not more desperate.
Think about that.
A government about to lose control should panic. It should destroy evidence. Silence witnesses. Erase history. But that's not what we see. Instead, every layer of the system seems strangely prepared, almost as if someone expected every step. But here's what changes everything. Prepared systems don't react. They wait. And waiting only makes sense if the outcome has already been calculated. This is the detail everyone missed. Throughout the series, every secret exists inside another secret. The relics lead to hidden records. The records lead to restricted departments. Those departments lead to the vault. The vault points toward an even bigger world. Every answer creates a larger question. At first, this feels like normal mystery writing. But look closer. The information is organized almost like levels in a test. You don't receive the next answer until you've proven you're capable of handling the previous one. That sounds less like censorship and more like selection. Who is the system selecting? That's the real question. Because not everyone reaches these discoveries. Most citizens live ordinary lives. They work. They follow the rules. They grow old. They never even realize another truth exists. Only a handful of people begin asking dangerous questions.
George.
Allison. Juliet. Lucas. A few others. Different personalities. Different backgrounds. Yet somehow they all arrive at nearly the same destination.
How?
Coincidence doesn't explain it anymore. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Curiosity spreads almost like a controlled infection. One discovery inspires another person. One death pushes someone else to investigate. One hidden object changes another life. The system loses one seeker, and another immediately appears. That rhythm feels intentional, almost engineered. And this is where it gets darker. Imagine that the founders weren't trying to preserve humanity. Imagine they were trying to improve it. Not through technology, not through genetics, but through repeated psychological filtering. Every generation creates millions of choices. Who obeys? Who questions? Who sacrifices themselves? Who protects others? Who lies? Who tells the truth? Inside the silo, every decision becomes measurable. Every crisis becomes data. Every rebellion becomes research. Suddenly the silo doesn't resemble an underground city anymore. It resembles the longest scientific experiment in human history. Now think about Bernard again. People often ask why he protects a system that causes so much suffering. Maybe because he believes the suffering has a purpose. Notice his behavior. He rarely enjoys cruelty. He rarely celebrates power. Most of the time, he looks exhausted, burdened, almost trapped.
Why?
Because deep down, Bernard may understand something nobody else does. Destroying the experiment could doom whatever remains of humanity outside. That's why he protects rules even when they seem heartless. Not because he trusts the system completely, but because he's terrified of what happens if the system collapses before it's ready. This completely reframes his relationship with Juliet. They're not simply enemies. They're two people solving the same puzzle from opposite directions. Bernard believes survival requires control. Juliet believes survival requires truth. Neither one may be entirely wrong. That's what makes their conflict so powerful. They're fighting over methods, not goals. But here's something even stranger. The finale repeatedly focuses on engineering, machines, maintenance, infrastructure. Most viewers see this as world building. But symbolism matters in Silo. Mechanical systems mirror human systems. Every machine requires balance, pressure, maintenance, redundancy, fail-safes. The society above those machines works exactly the same way. If one part breaks, another part automatically replaces it. A sheriff dies. Another sheriff rises. A leader falls. Another takes command. One truth disappears. Another truth surfaces. Everything keeps moving, just like the machinery below. That's not accidental writing. It's thematic evidence. The silo itself behaves like a living organism. Its citizens function like cells. Individual lives matter emotionally, but the organism always protects itself first. And here's the terrifying implication. What if every silo works exactly the same way? Not because they're identical, but because they're all running variations of the same experiment. Different leadership styles, different social rules, different psychological conditions. Each silo testing a different path toward long-term survival. If that's true, then Juliet hasn't escaped one prison. She's stepped into a network, a massive system comparing results across generations. That would explain why knowledge feels fragmented. No single silo is supposed to understand the whole picture. Each one only sees the portion necessary to keep the experiment alive. Think about the founders. History remembers them as visionaries who saved civilization. But what if they made one horrifying decision? What if they accepted that humanity couldn't survive by preserving the old world? What if they concluded that civilization itself had to be redesigned from the ground up? Not through war, not through dictatorship, through controlled evolution. Slow, patient, invisible, generation after generation. That idea transforms every sacrifice we've witnessed. George wasn't simply uncovering secrets. He became another data point. Allison wasn't merely searching for truth. She proved how people react when certainty disappears. Even Juliet may be fulfilling a role written long before she was born. Not because her future was scripted, but because someone understood that a person exactly like Juliet would eventually emerge. And if human behavior is predictable enough, then the founders never needed to know her name. They only needed to create the conditions that would inevitably produce someone like her. But one final connection changes this theory from disturbing to almost impossible to ignore. Because the finale hints that the experiment may already be reaching its intended conclusion. And if that's true, then Season 4 won't be about discovering another secret. It will be about discovering who has been watching every single cycle from the very beginning. Everything we've uncovered leads to one unavoidable conclusion. The biggest mystery in Silo was never what happened to the outside world. It was whether the people inside were ever truly free. Because once the Season 3 finale is viewed through this theory, every character becomes part of a design much larger than themselves. But here's what changes everything. The show never tells us that control is maintained through fear alone. It shows us that control is maintained through hope. Think about every important character. Each one is driven by hope, not fear. Allison hoped there was another world. George hoped the truth could set people free. Lucas hoped knowledge could change the future. Juliet hopes humanity deserves honesty. Even Bernard hopes civilization can survive. Different dreams. Same outcome. Every one of them moves deeper into the system. That cannot be a coincidence. Look at what the show is actually telling us. Hope is the engine that keeps the experiment running. Without hope, people stop searching. Without searching, there are no discoveries. Without discoveries, the system learns nothing. This is why every generation is allowed just enough truth to keep moving forward. Never enough to end the cycle. Always enough to continue it. And this is where it gets darker. For years, viewers believed the founders built the silos to protect human life. But what if survival was only the first objective? The second objective may have been far more important. To rebuild humanity into something that would never repeat the mistakes that destroyed the old world. That would explain why the system values behavior more than comfort. Every crisis becomes a lesson. Every rebellion becomes a test. Every impossible decision measures what kind of people humanity is becoming. Suddenly, the laws inside the silo make terrifying sense. They're not simply rules. They're variables. Change one rule, and human behavior changes. Introduce one forbidden relic, and curiosity spreads. Remove one leader, and society reorganizes itself. The founders may have been studying civilization the way scientists study living organisms. Patiently, quietly, across centuries. Now think about Juliet one last time. Most fans see her as the woman destined to destroy the system. But this theory suggests something far more unsettling. She may actually be the system's greatest success. Not because she obeys it, because she proves it works. She is intelligent, compassionate, independent, resourceful, exactly the kind of person humanity would need after the apocalypse. If the experiment was designed to produce leaders capable of rebuilding civilization, then Juliet represents the outcome the founders were waiting for. That's why every obstacle seems to sharpen her instead of breaking her. Every betrayal teaches her something. Every loss strengthens her resolve. Every hidden truth pushes her toward becoming someone even greater. The experiment doesn't eliminate exceptional people. It creates them. But here's the terrifying twist. If Juliet is the result, then there were probably others before her. People who reached the same point. People who uncovered the same truths. People who believed they were the first.
What happened to them?
Did they fail? Did they disappear? Or did they leave behind clues that Juliet unknowingly followed? Remember what we've seen throughout the series. Messages hidden inside forgotten places. Objects that survive longer than memories. Systems designed to outlive generations. Maybe those weren't accidents. Maybe they were breadcrumbs left by previous survivors who almost escaped the cycle. Almost. Because every time someone gets close to the complete truth, the story resets. A new sheriff. A new rebellion. A new believer. The faces change. The pattern remains. That is the real prison. Not the steel walls. Not the underground city. The prison is repetition. Generation after generation believing they are writing history, when history has already been written countless times before. And yet, there is one reason this cycle may finally be breaking. The Season 3 finale introduces something different. Not a new location.
Not a new machine. Not a new secret.
A new perspective. For the first time, the boundaries between isolated truths begin to collapse. Characters no longer possess only fragments of the puzzle. Those fragments are starting to connect. And once enough pieces come together, the experiment itself becomes visible. That is the one thing the founders may never have wanted. Because an experiment only works while its subjects don't know they're inside one. The moment they recognize the pattern changes. That possibility transforms everything we should expect from Season 4. The next chapter may not be about escaping a silo. It may be about escaping the logic that built every silo. Imagine Juliet discovering that dozens or even hundreds of silos have reached this exact moment before. Imagine finding records of previous heroes whose stories ended the same way. Imagine realizing that every act of rebellion was predicted decades in advance. That would be the ultimate revelation. Not that humanity was controlled, but that humanity became so predictable it could be controlled. And if the founders truly master human behavior, then one final question becomes impossible to ignore. Who designed them? Because if the silos were built as an experiment, someone had to decide what humanity should become. Someone chose the rules. Someone chose the tests. Someone chose the future. And what if that person or that system has been waiting all this time for Juliet to reach the exact place she stands now? Because if this theory is true, then the Season 3 finale didn't solve the biggest mystery. It simply revealed that the biggest mystery has never been inside the silo at all. It's the unseen intelligence that has been shaping every choice, every rebellion, and every generation from the shadows. And if that intelligence is still watching, then Season 4 won't begin with humanity fighting for freedom. It will begin with humanity discovering that the final observer has been waiting for them to ask the one question nobody has dared to ask. Who is really running the experiment?